But now let's hop over to the phones because taking time out of his busy day, and we definitely appreciate that. Proudly representing the 89th District in Freeport, our friend, State Representative Andrew Chesney. Andrew, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Glad to have you on. It's been a while since you and I talked, and I think we have a good occasion on which to discuss something, and that is this FOID card changes that are headed to the governor's desk. I know you have some very, very strong opinions on them, ones I share with you as well. You had started out with, let's get rid of the FOID. And
yeah, yep.
And everybody that I talked to that is a gun owner and a legal gun owner was on board with that one because, in essence, we're paying to exercise our Second Amendment right. We'll see what the court has to say about that before all is said and done. But you had some ideas on how to, if we're going to do this, how to make it better.
Yeah, I mean, the FOID card is a constitutional nightmare. They put forward what we'll call a skinny fix the FOID bill that, in their view, attempts to try to address some of the underlying issues with FOID. The primary concern that I had is this is effectively a tax on every private transfer of firearms throughout the state of Illinois. So you want to sell somebody else a gun, normally you would just have to grab their FOID card, you would log them into a system, you'd get a green light, you would print that out, each person would hold on to that document for 10 years, and everything was okay. Now you actually have to take it to an FFL dealer, pay a $25 fee, and they have to hold on to it for 20 years. And again, my point is that criminals don't care about this stuff. This does nothing for public safety. It just jams up law-abiding citizens. So you have a bunch of bureaucrats that are trying to polish this FOID turd, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense because the FOID card has only been implemented, as I said to you several months ago on this issue, by only 8% of the country. So 92% of the country doesn't have this, and we've seen murder rates just skyrocket in Chicago. And Mayor Lightfoot wants to blame Indiana. Well, Indiana isn't the problem. When you defund police, you end cash bail, you vilify the profession of law enforcement, and you don't respect the rule of law, this is what happens. It has nothing to do with law-abiding gun owners. Absolutely nothing. And
especially when you look at some of the problems in Chicago, well, you shot up a place, you did this, that. Well, we're not going to hold you because that would be wrong. We're going to let you go. And meanwhile, I'm sure you're going to shoot more people, but we'll figure that out. And after all, it's all Indiana's problem anyway. If you'd just gotten the FOID card, we could have avoided all of this.
So silly.
Yeah, it really is. Now, what are the changes that in particular with what's sitting on the governor's desk awaiting signature that bother you the most?
The biggest change that bothers me the most is the cost to transfer the firearm, right? So that is something that really, I think cuts across our constitutional rights and what is common sense. Again, law-abiding citizens, you want to sell me a gun, I want to sell you a gun. We can do this transaction. We don't need bureaucratic paperwork and fees to do this because the criminals don't care and they're never going to do it anyway. So all it is regulating good people. So that's primarily the number one concern. The number two is it used to be a mandatory fingerprint requirement, and now it's a voluntary, but if you voluntarily submit your fingerprints, then what happens is it expedites your FOID card. And again, I don't think I should have to give my fingerprints to government for my constitutional right. That's just crazy. So those were the two big hang-ups for me. And then the largest concern that I have is I just fundamentally disagree with the program, and I'm not willing to endorse or support something I don't think is constitutional, something that I don't believe does anything for public safety. Because I asked the sponsor, which I would have been a little more convinced of supporting it when I asked the sponsor, do you believe this addresses public safety? If he would have said no, I don't think it addresses safety per se, but I think it makes the process this process of FOIDs easier for everybody, and it will break up the logjam, and this is supported by the Illinois State Police and many stakeholders. Okay, maybe that's a better argument, but they believe this is going to improve public safety in Chicago. The gangbangers and the thugs and those that are breaking the law, they don't care about this stuff. They don't even know about it. And, Kim Foxx in Chicago, she isn't going to prosecute it anyways. I told people on the floor, the reason people move to our areas, in the rural areas, is because they're generally speaking, they're safe, and we give good people guns and encourage them to carry them and have them in their homes if they choose to, and we want to put bad dudes behind bars, period. And that's why, and it's a pretty simple formula. It's completely opposite in the Chicagoland area, which, just so you know, Chicago has had more murders than New York City and L.A. combined. It's a war zone there.
Well, Indiana should be ashamed of itself then.
Yeah. It's Indiana's problem, yeah.
I'm looking at some of the literature on the state law calls for applications to be processed within 30 days. ISP Firearm Services Bureau takes an average of 207 days to process new FOID card applications, 218 days for renewals. And now they're saying that, when you have the fingerprints that could expedite the process of concealed carry licenses, it doesn't work for FOID cards, but now this would have an effect on FOID card. Essentially what? Letting you cut the line?
It's letting you cut the line if you want to give up more of your rights and more of your privacy. If you're comfortable giving the federal government, or the state government in this case, your fingerprints, and that doesn't bother you for a constitutional right, then by all means you can. I have an issue with it. I have a privacy concern. I have an underlying constitutional concern. I just don't believe you should have to be fingerprinted and send your prints and show me your papers and show me your IDs and show me your photos for you to possess a firearm. If you're not allowed to possess a firearm, you're a felon, domestic abuse. We all know what the criteria is for those that aren't allowed to possess a firearm. And if you do and you get caught, you are going to go to jail, or should go to jail, for a very long time. And the problem that we're seeing in Illinois is state's attorneys, once you start to gravitate into the suburbs, and primarily in the Chicagoland area, they don't want to address and prosecute illegal firearm possessions and illegal firearm use. They want to replace cops with mental health counselors. They don't want to put you in jail. They want to get you out on jail on cash-free bond. And so it's the pivot of how we've addressed criminal behavior is that now you're seeing the result of this through the city of Chicago, and now they're trying to blame law-abiding gun owners, and Mayor Lightfoot says that it's Indiana. Really?
Right. And you've got sponsors of this legislation saying, quote, first and foremost, this was legislation to reduce gun violence, and it achieved 90% of the original legislation.
Yeah, they made this same argument. Remember when they regulated a few years ago, they regulated the gun dealers, and they made them have all these different requirements, insurance and bars and cameras and compliance. And they effectively made it miserable for gun dealers. And this was good. Gun deaths were going to plummet. Violence was going to be on the decline. It did nothing. It never does because, again, until they're willing to address the underlying problems when it comes to our educational system, when it becomes to, the single family and the traditional family that we want, that we think produces better outcomes, when we would talk about the respect for law enforcement, the respect for the rule of law, the respect for our judges, that we encourage them to make the right decision and actually follow the laws that we write and we pass and the governor signs into law. Because a lot of times we have rogue and activist judges that still won't follow the laws as we've written them. Until we do that, you're going to continue to see crime become a problem. But if you take a look at areas like ours, the rural areas, we have a different approach to how we look at law enforcement. It's just the way it is. And I would argue we've seen less crime as a result of it.
Absolutely. And the idea that, okay, now the law-abiding people are going to jump through these hoops. Somebody who's not really keen on getting fingerprinted but doesn't want to wait the better part of a year for something to come through on a renewal or original application is probably going to bite the bullet in a lot of cases, pardon the pun, and go and get the either the regular print or the digital print done and give it to the state to keep on file, all for exercising what is a constitutional right.
It's a very scary moment in history when every day we're being asked to, Show our paperwork for a constitutional right like the Second Amendment and the possession of firearms. Show our paperwork. Now we have to show our health records to show if we're fully vaccinated. And we have to show our paperwork at certain events to see if we're going to be in a good section with masks or a bad section without masks, or a bad section without masks and a good section with masks, depending on how you look at it. And we get quarantined and put in all these different spots now. Just think of the liberties that are being stripped from the average citizen as a result of COVID. And you know, we have to fight for this. I mean, it isn't just FOID cards. It's vaccine passports is going to be the next big fight. You know, they're trying to put these in all of our universities and vaccinate every 20-year-old. I think if they want to go get it, great. But I think if they don't want to get it, that's great too. And when in America have we ever not embraced choice? We've always embraced choice and freedoms and liberties. And we're seeing it get trampled on. And a lot of this is all in the name of COVID, because when they were selling the FOID card and these enhancements and these fixes and these tweaks, well, we saw all the shortcomings as a result of COVID. No, you guys really don't want a lot of people to have guns. You made it really, really difficult. Now you're trying to polish up this turd because you're tired of getting all the complaints from the legislators. That's really what this bill is.
Right. And as you look around the nation and you see the amount of states that are going to permitless carry, as long as you are well within the boundaries of the law, like you mentioned, you're not an abuser, you're not a felon, you don't have any of the things that are an automatic disqualification for it, then if you're old enough, then it is legal for you. I think Texas just threw this into play.
Texas just signed it into law.
Yep. Within the last couple of days, I know Tennessee's on it. You're seeing more and more states doing it. I know that Missouri is trying to build protections for Second Amendment people who follow the Second Amendment, people who want to be legal gun owners. They're trying to build in some protections from them because they feel it encroaching from every side.
It is. You know, I spent my time in college in Arizona, and we had constitutional carry in that state. And the ownership and possession of firearms was just a non-issue. It was never discussed. Some people openly carried, some people concealed carried, people carried at work, people carried at home, people carried at their church, and it just was never a discussion. And it just seems like, and, you know, Phoenix is a pretty big spot, and it's growing exponentially as well. And it's just how states view good people has to change in Illinois, because the majority of people in Illinois are good people. We may disagree on issues, but we're good people. It doesn't mean we're going to start making felons and career criminals out of law-abiding citizens because they didn't have the proper paperwork to possess firearms. And I will tell you this. Here's the piece that's the most surprising about the FOID cards and the concealed carry. This jams up black and brown communities the most. This jams up urban areas the most. Much of it because the communication, the education around the system. There are many people that possess legal firearms but are illegal because they don't have FOID cards and concealed carry cards. And here's the issue. If you're in Chicago and you do this, they'll whack you with a felony. You know, out here, there's more discretion by our state's attorneys and our judges. If you were otherwise legally allowed to carry or legally allowed to possess, they'll say, hey, go get your FOID card, go get your concealed carry, we'll dismiss the case. In the Chicagoland area, they're whacking these kids with felonies, you know, effectively altering their career path for the rest of their lives. And so I'm trying to make the plea to the black and the Latino caucus and say, hey, listen, you're looking through this as, you're hurting many of the same people that we're all trying to represent. And it's disproportionately impacting people of color and people in the urban areas because most people, especially in the city, they don't even know these FOID cards and the CCWs and concealed carry things exist. They're just saying, hey, Chicago's unsafe, I need a gun.
Right. But they're not giving me any means with which to go and get one. And the disinformation that I'm getting kind of has me not wanting to step into that arena to begin with.
There's just a huge messaging issue. We should be encouraging. It actually happened to a legislator in Chicago who is a current legislator right now and actually got arrested because his concealed carry card showed invalid or expired, and it was a mix-up in the paperwork. In Chicago, they arrest you for this. He was a sitting legislator and had to go through weeks of embarrassment and weeks of paperwork to prove to the Illinois State Police that he actually was, in fact, legal at the time, and it just didn't update in the system. And my point is, hey, he's a lawyer, he's a legislator, he has a few bucks, he can figure this out. What do you do to the single mother that just wants to have a gun because, the south side of Chicago is a war zone? And then they find out she has a gun and they turn her into a criminal and a career felon. That's where I just have the complete disconnect. If you're a bad person, you're not otherwise allowed to have a gun, you should go to jail. You should be a felon. You should, be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But this idea, because I don't have this ID that does nothing for public safety, that we're going to then turn people under the other side of the judicial system is just backwards.
Couldn't agree with you more on that one. What are the chances now that this bill is all said and done and sitting on the governor's desk? Any chance that he won't sign it?
Oh, no, he's going to sign this. We had Republicans that supported this bill.
Yeah, I saw where a handful of Republicans came over to join the supermajority on this one.
Yeah, and again, it's just a complete disconnect. And I don't know why some of the Republicans love to run scared on these issues. I can make this argument in Naperville and Aurora and Barrington the same as I could make it in Rockford and Freeport, the same I could make it in my hometown of Shannon, Illinois, of population 800. These documents do nothing for public safety. And when they see, because look at Chicago, regulated. You can't find a city that's more regulated with firearms than the city of Chicago. Murder rates, they had the highest murder rate in January that they've had in a decade.
Yep.
It's doing absolutely nothing.
Yep, and we always hear, we just need tougher gun laws. No, we have tough gun laws. You just need to enforce them.
That's right.
You just need to enforcement. Representative Andrew Chesney, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. Whenever, I ring the office and go, hey, do you have a couple of minutes? You are always kind enough to give us that time. We appreciate your work on the puppy bill legislation, which was really, really important, and a lot of people were behind that, and appreciate the good work you're doing on FOID cards and at least keeping people informed, even if you can't stop what's going on here.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on, and just a quick update on the puppy bill. That actually got through the Senate. That's on the governor's desk, and we expect him to sign it. And that is a major piece of legislation for those that are animal lovers, and we fully expect him to sign it. And that came after stiff opposition from the high-powered lobbyists in Chicago that tried to defeat our bill.
Yeah, well done on that one. We salute you for that one. Andrew, thanks again for your time. I hope you have a great, great weekend.
Hey, you have a great weekend. Thanks so much for having me on.
We appreciate that. State Representative Andrew Chesney out of Freeport, fine guy, and working hard on FOID cards. But like we said, there's some things you can stop. There's some things you can't. This turned out to be one of those he couldn't.